1968. This is one of Tom's school pictures. This is Sandy, Karen, Fran, Mrs. Smith, Frank, Kathy, and Georgie in 1973. This is Tom, Amy, and Tommy in 77. This is picture Frank in 77. This is Donna, Nikki, Beth Ann, and Nick in July of 75. This is Frank, Shirley, and William in 75. This is Nancy, Dave, and Frank, 75. This is Betty, Nick, and Beth Ann, 75. Grandma Katie in 75. This is Fran, Jim Parfit, and Bud in 75. This is Bud and Brian, 75. Charlie in 75. This is Mary Ann, Susie, Betty, and Helen in 75. This is Tommy, Susie, Kay, Junie, and Chucky in 75. This fish. This is Susie, Nancy. This is Kay, Helen, and Grandma Katie in 75 at Kay's house. This is Junie in 75. This is Karen, Susie, Cheryl, and Cindy in 75. This is Georgie, Junie, and Josephine in 75. This is Frank, Shirley, Fish, and Georgie in 75. This is Jim in 75. This is Josephine in 75. This is me and Nancy holding Tommy in August of 75. This is Frank and Helen in 75. This is Georgie, Fran, Josephine, Karen, and Sandy in July of 75. And this is Tom's car. This is Georgie and Kathy. This is Donna, Nikki, Beth Ann, and Nick in July of 75. Donna and Nikki in 75. This is me and Tom the day before Tommy was born, July 7th of 95. That is July 7th of 74, not 95. This is Frank, Mrs. Smith, and Tom in July of 74. And all the reunion pictures earlier was 74, not 75. This is Frank and Mrs. Smith. This is Frank and me. This is Frank, Mrs. Smith, and me in August of 74. This is Mrs. Smith, August of 74. This is Tom in August of 74. This is Tom up on the roof in Youngstown getting ready to pick cherries in August of 74. It's Tom again. Tom again. This is David and William in June of 75. This is Nick and Ron Dick in about 1973. This is Nikki and Beth Ann in August of 75 with Nick and Donna. This is Nick, Kay, Marianne, Frank, Helen, Tom, and Josephine in August of 75. This is Josephine, Marianne, Helen, and Kay in 75. This is Kay and Mrs. Smith in 75. Nick, Kay, Marianne, Frank, Helen, Tom, and Josephine again. This is Nick, Donna, Beth Ann, and Nikki in August of 77. This is Holly and Chucky and Frank with a wig on in August of 77. This is Grandma Katie, Junie, and Nancy in August of 77. This is Mrs. Smith, Marianne, and Kay in August of 77. This is Shirley and Donna in August of 77. And this is a group shot of the kids in 77. This is Carol, Georgie, and Mary Ann in August of 78. This is Nick, Nikki, Beth Ann, and Donna in August of 78. Josephine, Sandy, and Fran in 78. This is Frank and Helen in August of 78. This is Marianne, Josephine, and Shirley in August of 78. This is Donna in August of 78. Donna and Nick. Frank and Mrs. Smith. Chucky, Holly, and Chrissy. Bill and Karen. And Ed. Nancy, Angie, JD, and Dave. Georgie and one of his girlfriends. Fish and Shirley. Junie. Fish, Shirley, and Junie. Amy, Tommy, and Christy in January of 79. Carol, Beth Ann, Georgie, Nikki, Tommy, Christy, and Amy in January of 79. The same group again. Carol, Beth Ann, and Georgie, January of 79. Marianne and Frank, January 79. Nick and Marianne, January 79. Donna, Nick, Nikki, and Beth Ann, January 79. Marianne, Georgie, and Carol, January 79. This is Marianne. Shirley. And Kay. This is Nick, Beth Ann, and Donna in August of 1980. This is Nick, Donna, Mrs. Smith, and Frank. This is Mrs. Smith and Frank. This is Helen and Kay in August of 79. This is Bill, Junie, Frank, and Holly. August of 79. This is Frank and Holly. Josephine and Fran, August of 79. His wife. This is Donna, 79. This is Georgie with his wife and 2 of his kids. Tommy. This is Marnie with her 2 kids. This is Teresa with one of her boyfriends. This is Bud, Frank, and Betty in August of 79. Fran, Mrs. Smith, and Frank, 79. Junie, George and Marianne, Frank, Fish, and Shirley, Bill, Mrs. Smith, and Christy in 79. Holly and Chucky. Tom, Josephine, and Nick in August of 79. This is Frank with someone in 79. This is Marianne, Nick, and Betty in August of 79. Fish and Frankie. This is Donna's brother Dennis with Frank in August of 79. Fish and Shirley. Susie and Ed. Fran, Bill, and Junie. Fran and Bill. This is Junie in 79. This is Amy and Tommy in 79. This is Georgie, Carol, Marianne, and George in August of 1980. This is Virginia and her husband in 1980. Sophie in 1980, down at Mary Ann's. This is Mary in 1980, Mary Ann's. Teresa, Helen, and Cheryl, 1980. This is Kate now, 1980 at Mary Ann's. Fish, Shirley, and David, 1980. Kay and Junie. Kay and Junie with their kids and some of their grandkids. This is Frank, Marianne, Kay, Josephine, Helen, Fish, Joe, Nick, and Tom in at Helen's. And I don't know what year. This is Grandma, Katie, and Holly in August of '82. This is Kay and Frank in August of '82. This is Sandy with one of her boyfriends in August of '82. This is Fran, Tommy, and Tommy McDowell in August of '82. This is William and one of his girlfriends in '82. This is Karen and Bill with one of their kids in '82. This is Cheryl and one of her boyfriends. This is Susie and Ed and Cheryl and her boyfriend. This is Chucky and Holly with their 2 kids. This is Nancy and Dave with their 2 kids. Kay and Junie in '82. George and Tom. This is Donna and Nick with Beth Ann and Nikki, August of '82. This is George, Georgie, Marianne, and Carol, August of '82. This is Karen and Bill down at Chesla's, and I don't have the year. This is Donna and Nick down at Chesla's. Kay and Junie. These next ones are down at Chesla's Park at the Chesla reunion, and I don't know what year, and I don't know all the people. This is Louise. And Fran. This is Tommy with his first wife Donna. This is Bud and Betty. Carol. This is me and Frank. This is Betty, Cindy, and Billy. Frankie and Colleen. Fish and Shirley, and Marianne and Frank dancing. Beth Ann and Carol. Virginia. This is Josephine, Kay, Frank, Nick, Fish, Betty, Marianne, and Tom at Chesla's. This is Christy and Jenny. This is Jody, Jennifer, and BJ. This is Sandy and Scott. This is Tom. This is Josephine and Karen and Bill. This is Fran. This is Christy and Jenny with George Chesla's wife holding I don't know who. This is Karen and Bill with BJ. This is Anne, Mary, and Caroline. This is Sophie, Andy, Anne, Frank, and Virginia. And this is Andy's wife, Mary. Not Mary Ann. This is Josephine, Mary Ann, and Frank at Frank's birthday party in New Florence, and I don't know what year. This is Frank at his birthday party. Frank and Caroline. Anne and Andy. Fran and Josephine. Kate and Al. This is Kay and Junie, and I think it's in 84. Tommy and Donna. Kay and Junie with their kids and grandkids. And I believe 84. Dave and Nancy and their 2 kids. This is Kay. Becky and Holly and their 2 kids. Frank and Helen in 84. Frank and Beth Ann. Helen with Cheryl and Myrnie and their kids. Group again. Is Frank and Al in 84. Karen and Bill with their kids. Sandy and Scott. William and Carol. Dave Gessler. Pauline with little Frankie. Betty and Bud with Brian and 2 of his kids. Brian with his wife and kids. Me and Tom with Tommy, Christy, and Amy. George and Marianne with Georgie and Carol. This is Helen, Kay, Josephine, Frank, Betty, Marianne, Tom, Nick, and Fish. And I believe it's 84. This is Tom with little Frankie. This is Tom, Christy, and little Frankie. This is little Frankie. Again. And this is Christy with little Frankie. This is Christy at Fish's Swimming Pool. This is Nick and Nikki. This is Nick, Amy, Nikki, and Beth Ann. This is Amy. This is Tom and Tommy. This is Nick, Nikki, Christy, and Beth Ann. Same group again. This is Nick, Nikki, Tom, and Christy. This is Tommy. Nick, Nikki, Tom, and Amy. This is Christy. This is Frank and 85 at Josephine's. This is Nick and Donna and Myrnie. In 85. This is Tommy and Christy in 85. Carol, Beth Ann, Georgie, and Amy. Tom, Donna, and Myrnie. Beth Ann, Georgie, and Amy. Bean. Beth Ann, Tommy, and Fran. Nick and Cheryl. Donna and Nancy, 85. Nancy and Holly. William, Carol, and George. Steve, Kay, and Tommy. And Christy. Junie, Georgie, and Amy. Donna, Myrnie, and Nancy. Nick, Cheryl, and Nikki. Karen, Bruce, Beth Ann, Tommy, and Fran. This is little Frankie down at Chesla's Park, and I think 85. This is Tommy. And this is Frank and Andy. This is Shirley and Marianne at Chesla's Park in July of 87. This is Frankie and Jennifer, July of 87. This is Frank with his brother and sisters in July of 87. This is Frank with his brother and sisters at New Florence Playground in July of 87. This is Rose in Virginia. Kate and Andy. Andy and Frank. This is Andy's wife, Ann. This is Tommy, Amy, and Georgie. This is Aunt Ann in July of 88. This is Frank and Shirley's brother Chuck. in August of 88. This is Joe. This is Fran and Tommy, August of 88. Chucky and Holly. This is Marianne and George. This is Josephine in 88. Joe and Georgie in 88. And Joe in 88. This is Bob's wife and daughter. Chuck and his wife. This is Susie and her 2 kids, August of 88. Frankie and Robbie. This is Kate, me, and Tom in July of 87. This is Nick sleeping in August of 87. This is Tom sleeping in August of 87. Nick sleeping again. Tom sleeping again. Beth Ann. This is Nikki and Amy. Nikki, Nick, and Beth Ann. This is Nick. This is Nikki, August of 87. This is Tom at Thanksgiving of 88. This is Beth Ann and Scott, Thanksgiving of 88. Nick. Tom. Nikki, Scott, and Beth Ann. George and Georgie, Thanksgiving of 88. Marianne and Nick. Tom, Beth Ann, Nikki, and Nick, Thanksgiving of 88. This is Nick and Tom operating on a typewriter, Thanksgiving of 88, and it never worked again. This is Nick and Nikki. This is George, Georgie, Marianne, and Carol, August of 89. This is Tom, Nick, Betty, August of 89 at Mary Ann's. This is Frank, Tom, Amy, me, Christy, and Tommy, August of 89. This is Fish and Shirley with their kids and grandkids, August of 89 at Mary Ann's. This is Nick, Frankie, and Nick. This is Colleen and Fish. This is Fish, Shannon, and William. This is Carol and Shannon, August of 89. This is Kay and Junie with some of their kids and grandkids. This is Frank with Betty and Bud and their kids and grandkids. This is Frank with Fran and Josephine with their kids and grandkids. This is Nick, Tom, Frank, Fish, Helen, Josephine, Kay, Betty, and Mary Ann. August of 89. Same group again. This is a picture of Frank. This is a picture of Grandma Katie in Christmas of 94. 84. This is Kay and Junie, Christmas of 84. This is Junie and Amy, Christmas of 84. This is Tommy and Donna, Christmas of 84. This is Josephine and Jody, Christmas of 84. This is Nick and Donna at Lake Erie in 85. This is Beth Ann. This is Nikki and Amy in 85. Beth Ann and one of her boyfriends. Beth Ann again. Nikki. This is Amy and Frank. This is Frank in August of 1990. This is Christy and Frank in August of 90. Tom and Frank. Frank and his neighbor. And Frank again, August of 90. And this is the four-wheeler Mike crew, which is Christy, Tommy, Mike Umferdorfer, Dave Collins, Nikki, and Amy. This is Dave, Nikki, and Amy. 3 again. This is Tom hosing the mud off of Amy. Joe, Tom, and Fish. This is Joe and Fish. This is Bud and Betty, August of 91. These are Frank's sisters. Let's see, there's Kate, Mary, Sophie, Virginia, and Rose. August of 91. Kate and Mary, Virginia, and Rose. Karen, Josephine, and Kathy in August of 90. Of Karen, August of 90. Andy. Is Johnny, Helen, and Tiffany in August of 90. Junie and Kay, August of 91. Is Josephine, Betty, and Mary Ann, August of 91. This is Frankie with little Frankie and Robbie, August 91. This is Junie and Emily, August of 91. Josephine and Georgie, August of 91. This is Carol, Mary Ann, Betty, and Josephine. This is Georgie, Mary Ann, and George, August 91. This is Mary with her two daughters, Louise and Caroline. This is Carol, Georgie, George, and Marianne. This is Marianne. This is Nick. This is Emily and Christy. This is Josephine, Amy, and Nick. Karen, Jennifer, and Josephine. Again. Fran, BJ, and Tommy. This is Tom. Fish and Shirley. Kate and Al. Josephine, Sandy, and Scott. Tommy, Dana, and Emily. Christy and Patrick. Him again. Emily and Christy. Christy covered in whipped cream. Christy again. This is Nick, Beth Ann, and her husband. Name 3 again. This is Nick. And Katrina. This is Katrina. This is Dave and Jennifer. This is Dave, Jennifer, Katrina, and Nikki. This is Georgie, Marianne, and George with Arizona. This is Sophie, Virginia, Mary, and Rose in July of '95. This is the same 4 again. This is Carol, Georgie, George, and Marianne in December of '94. This is one of Nikki's school pictures. Anne. William. Frankie in '79. Tommy McDowell. Karen in '76. Nikki in 6th grade. Beth Ann in 10th grade. This is Sandy with Amber in 1985. This is Betty and Bud with Brian and 2 of his kids in 1985. This is Nancy and Dave Gessler with Angie and JD in '85. This is Chucky and Holly with their 2 kids in '85. This is Susie and Ed and Eddie Jr. in '85. This is me and Tom with Tommy, Amy, and Christy in '85. This is Nick and Donna with Beth Ann and Nikki, August of '85. This is Brian and Jackie with Danny, Mikey, and Jessica in '85. This is Helen and Kay in '85. This is Myrnie in '85. This is Marianne in '85. This is Carol and Jamie Parfit in 85. This is Betty and Bud in 85. This is Frank, Nick, Fish, and Betty in 85. This is William and Scott in 85. This is Susie and Eddie in 85. This is Jamie in 85. This is Jamie and Jerry Parfit with Josephine in 1985. This is a picture of me and Frank in 1981. This is a picture of Tom and Kay, 1981. This is BJ and Jennifer in 1985. This is Carol, Georgie, and Marianne in 1979. This is Frank and Sophie, 1984. This is Carol and Frank, 1984. This is Josephine and Marianne, 1986. This is William and Lori in 1981. This is Christy in 1984. This is Fish, Shirley, and David, 1981. This is Jody in 1985. This is a picture of Frank. This is a picture of Mary Moore and Helen Parfit in 1981. This is a picture of Susie McDowell in 1981. This is a picture of Donna, 1981. This is a picture of Frank, 1984. This is me, Tom, Tommy, Amy, and Christy in 1984. This is Marianne and Bud, 1985. This is Brenda, Georgie, Tammy, and Amber, 1985. This is Nick, Sandy, Josephine, and Helen in 85. This is Cheryl, Myrnie, Tommy, and Bruce in 1987. This is a picture of Fran in 85. This is Shirley, Angie, and Kay in 87. This is Bruce and Tommy McDowell in 87. This is Fish and Donna in 87. This is a picture of David. This is a picture of Beth Ann. This is a picture of Nikki. This is a picture of Nick. This is a picture of Beth Ann and Nick and Mary Ann in 84. This is a picture of Nick in 84. This is Nikki and Beth Ann in 1985. This is Beth Ann with BJ and Jennifer in 85. This is Beth Ann, 1983. This is Jamie, 1983. Jamie again, 83. This is Josephine in August of 83. This is Fish and Shirley, 83. This is William and Lori in 83. This is Frank and Joe, August of 83 at Nick's house. This is Chucky and Charlotte, 1983. This is Shirley and Charlotte at Nick's house, 1983. This is Tom in 1983. This is Joe and Marianne at Nick's house in 83. This is Nick, Marianne, and Tom in 83. This is Fish, Joe, Tom, and Nick, 1983. This is Tom and Nick in 83. Joe and Tom. This is Fish and Joe in 83. This is Frank and Fish in 83. This is Frank, Fish, Joe, Tom, and Nick, 1983, up at Nick's house. This is Marianne and Nick dancing, 1983. This is Donna and Nick, 1983. This is Donna, 1983. This is Fish, Nick, Joe, and Tom. This is Joe and Georgie, 1983. This is Charlotte, Shirley, and Donna, 83. This is Nick and Donna with Beth Ann and Nikki, 1983. This is a picture of Donna, 1983. This is a picture of Shirley at Nick's house in 83. This is a picture of Charlotte, 1983. At Nick's house. This is Georgie and Kathy Micah in March 30th of 73. This is Marianne and Fish. And this is Frank and Marianne. This is a picture of David, Carol, Beth Ann, Georgie, Nikki, Tommy, Amy, Angie, and Jody in September of 77. This is a picture of Helen's kids in 1984. This is one of Chucky McDowell's school pictures. This is Joe and Charlotte in 1977. This is Joe and Charlotte in 1983 at Nick's house. This is Frank, Fish, Joe, Tom, and Nick in 1983. This is the 4th-generation picture of Frank Chesla's in 84. This is Marianne, Frank, Joe, Nick, Helen K in the front, Josephine in the back, Fish, and Tom at Nick's house in 1983. This is Beth Ann and Donna. This is Fish, Nick, Marianne, and Josephine. This is Frank, Nick, Marianne, and Josephine. This is the same 4 again. This is Frankie, Colleen, and Shirley. This is Frank with his sisters Rose and Ann. This is a picture of Nick in 88. This is Frank with Betty and Bud and their kids and grandkids in 89. This is Frank with Fish and Shirley with their kids and grandkids in 89. This is Joe, Marianne, and Fish. This is Bruce Parfit and his daughter Shannon. This is an early picture of George, Marianne, Carol, and Georgie. This is a picture of Fran's dad, Mrs. Smith, Frank, and Myrnie in 1977. This is Mrs. Smith and Frank in 77. This is Beth Ann and Nikki in 84. This is Frank holding little Frankie. This is Josephine, Helen, and Nick. This is a picture of Frank in 83. This is William in 83. This is Bill Gerhardt with Carol. This is Nick, Beth Ann, and Donna in 78. This is Nick's graduation picture. This is Nick, Marianne, Josephine, Fish, Frank, Kay, Helen, and Tom. This is Nicky when he was 6 months old. And this is Beth Ann when she was 4 years old. This is Daniel Gerhardt in 93. This is BJ in 93 when he was in 7th grade. And this is Jennifer in 93 when she was in 5th grade. This is Jennifer Gerhardt, November 6th, 1982. This is one of Karen's school pictures. This is Karen and Bill with BJ and Jennifer in 83. This is Bruce Parfitt in 1970. This is Sandy Micah in 74. This is one of Nikki's school pictures. And this is one of Tommy's school pictures. This is a picture of Marianne. And this is Marianne again. This is Nick, Tom, Frank, and Fish with Marianne, Betty, Kay, Josephine, and Helen in the front in 1989. This is Amy and Ron's wedding picture, June 10th of 95. This is an early picture of Marianne. This is Joe and his girlfriend in 1995 at Fish's house. This is Shirley with Dana and Hannah in the background and Frankie. 95. This is Chucky and Holly in 95. This is Georgie and his girlfriend Tammy in 95. This is Tommy McDowell in 95. This is Georgie, 1995. This is Karen and Patrick. George and Tammy, 95. This is Jim and Myrnie and one of Myrnie's sons with their wives. This picture is Sandy in 95. Shirley and Kay. This picture of Helen. This is a picture of Tom with Amy and Christy. This is Cheryl, Myrnie, Helen holding Teresa's baby, and Teresa. This is Scott and Sandy with Sarah when she's in a beauty pageant. This is Helen with Tiffany. This is Tiffany when she was 3 years old in 1990. And this is Cheryl's daughter Lindsay when she was 4 years old. This is Tiffany when she was 6 in 1993. And this is Tiffany again. This is a picture of Josephine up at Nick's house in 93. This is a picture of Joe and Nick. This is a picture of Tom, Nick, Josephine, Joe, Marianne, and Fish up at Nick's house. Same group again. This is Fish, Marianne, and Joe. This is Tom, Nick, and Josephine. This is a picture of Nikki's motorcycle. This is a picture of Nikki in '93. This is a picture of Beth Ann in '93. Again. And this is Beth Ann's baby in '93. This is a picture of Frankie in '93. This is Joe, Marianne, and Fish. Tom, Nick, and Josephine. This is Josephine, Joe, and Marianne. This is a picture of Jennifer and Dave Collins and their baby.
And they did that, and they're winning.